Emilcin, a small village located in Poland in the Lublin voivodeship in the Opole county near Opole Lubelskie. On the 10th of May 1978, although it was already spring, the weather was pretty cold. Like so many times before, a local farmer, Jan Wolski, then 71, got up early in the morning to tend the farm. There was no indication that this day would forever change not only the life of Wolski and his family, but also ufology in Poland. The events. That day, Jan Wolski went to a neighboring village to visit a local farmer, Jan Rak. Returning to Emilcin in a cart pulled by a mare, he decided to take a shortcut. Instead of going home by a comfortable but longer route, he decided to take a shorter one through the nearby forest. It was about 8:30 in the morning when he drove his cart into a large clearing, surrounded on all sides by trees. Entering the clearing involved driving through a strip of mud, a remnant of a now almost completely dry small stream. At one point, about 10 meters beyond the mud strip, Wolski notices two small creatures. He estimated their height at about 140 centimeters, about 4 feet and 7 inches. As he later said,
"They were very slim people, small. I thought they were maybe Chinese or other such people from some place on Earth. I didn't think they were not people, but some kind of monsters. Then I saw this vehicle."
The beings had greenish faces with protruding cheekbones, slanted eyes that went slightly to the sides of the head, and a slit instead of a mouth. They were dressed in something like black jumpsuits, which also covered their heads, with some humps at the back. The creatures had webbing between their fingers. They communicated in a high-pitched voice, incomprehensible to Wolski, speaking to each other very quickly. They moved awkwardly, walking with their legs apart. When Wolski drove past them, they simply jumped onto the cart. After entering the clearing, Wolski saw a strange object floating above the ground. It hung motionless about 5 meters, roughly 16 feet, above the meadow, hovering up and down by about half a meter. It had the form of a cuboid, with strange devices rotating in its corners, resembling whirls or drills. Wolski later mentioned a bus with turns. All the time, there was a faint sound coming from the object, which reminded Wolski of the sound of a transformer or the buzzing of a swarm of bees. Having neared the object, the strange beings jumped down from the cart and gestured to Wolski to do the same. He approached the object, near which two beings were also standing. There was also another creature that looked identical to those two. The fourth one was standing inside the object. A small platform hung from the vehicle, something like an elevator. The aliens ordered Wolski to stand on it. No sooner had he done this than the platform silently rose up, and in a flash, Wolski was inside. Using gestures, the strangers ordered Wolski to take off all his clothes. Then they began to examine him with a device resembling two small plates joined together in one place. The device kept making a strange clicking sound, like a camera shutter. Then, again using gestures, the strangers told Wolski that he could put his clothes on. The beings became interested in the leather belt of his trousers, alternately opening and closing the buckle. Even though, according to his estimates, Wolski stayed on board the flying object for at most a dozen or so minutes, he was able to observe several details. First of all, the interior of the object looked as if it was cast from a hard material similar to glass and, contrary to what we often see in science fiction movies, it was devoid of colorful flashing lights, controls and buttons, or even windows. The interior of the vehicle was completely dark, lit only by the light streaming through the now open door. Secondly, There were about 10 rooks and ravens in one corner of the object. They did not appear to be dead, moving their wings and legs, but they were unable to fly. Third, there were 2 small holes in one of the walls where one of the humanoids was manipulating a black stick. Finally, one of the creatures at some point pulled out a strange object, resembling an icicle in shape and appearance, and then started to eat this icicle. With gestures, it offered the icicle to Wolski, but he refused. Having been examined and having put his clothes back on, Wolski stood on the platform again, which immediately descended to the ground. Wolski, perhaps because he was too shocked, or perhaps because, having only completed primary school and not having read much, he knew nothing about UFOs, did not seem terrified by the whole incident, and later talked about it calmly and matter-of-factly. Before he got back to his cart and drove away, he turned to the beings and bowed. As he said,
"These people were so nice that I took off my hat and bowed to them as we left. And they bowed too. I got into the cart and went home."
Truth or fraud? Due to the complete unusualness of this event, people started talking about it, first in the village, then in the district, and then in the entire voivodeship. This is how a UFO enthusiast from Lublin, a certain Witold Wawrzonek, learned about the case and contacted one of the most famous Polish ufologists at that time, Zbigniew Blania-Bolnar. Just a few months after the event in Emilcin, the whole of Poland knew about it, and Jan Wolski's adventure with strange beings became the subject of a documentary film report on Polish television titled Zdarzenie w Emilcinie, or An Event in Emilcin, a radio report Łąka na skraju wszechświata, or A Meadow at the Edge of the Universe, and a comic book by Grzegorz Rosiński, published in the then widely read comics magazine Relax. However, the unusual nature of the phenomenon also meant that skeptics and mockers began to speak out almost immediately. It was said that the bloke had vivid dreams, that Wolski was under the influence of alcohol, and that these alien creatures were nothing more than drunken phantasmagorias, or that he was a victim of fraud or a masquerade joke. The problem is that there were witnesses confirming both the sequence of events, such as Jan Rak from the neighboring village, who confirmed that Wolski was there at a specific time, and the observation of the same object flying over the village. Additionally, psychological, psychiatric, and psychometric tests conducted by Blania-Bolnar and his team excluded the existence of any psychological disorders, as well as any tendency for Wolski to confabulate. Many Emilcin residents also confirmed that Wolski avoided alcohol and was never seen drunk. One of the claims made by skeptics and mockers was that the entire event was completely true, but only for Jan Wolski, because he and his family were hypnotized by Witold Wawrzonek. Wawrzonek was supposed to repay Blania-Bolnar by making him believe in a non-existent case and investigate it. The two men had been divided over a certain event, whereby Wawrzonek, having claimed he could not be hypnotized, was apparently easily hypnotized without his knowledge and agreement in one of the Polish TV shows devoted to the unknown. Hypnosis of Wolski and convincing him of an encounter with aliens was supposed to be Wawrzonek's revenge. All this was claimed by another researcher, a certain Bartosz Rodowtowski, in his book Tajne operacje PRL UFO, or Secret Operations, Polish People's Republic, and UFOs. According to him, the Emilcin case was just a hoax, although it is difficult to understand why anyone would lie about a close encounter with aliens in a village which, during the times of the Polish People's Republic, was small, dusty, and poor. This claim was widely disseminated and even taken up by some media and later also some internet portals. The problem is that the entire Wawrzynek family published a special statement in which they distanced themselves from these rumors, also stating that Wawrzynek had never engaged in hypnosis. Although the animosity between the two ufologists may have been true, Wawrzynek would not have been able to hypnotize Wolski because he did not know anything about it. Additionally, Radutowski claims that Jan Wolski was very gullible and susceptible to suggestion. However, psychological tests conducted on Wolski showed that he, on the contrary, was very resistant to suggestions and did not allow himself to be talked into anything. Additionally, it should be remembered that the events in Emilcin took place during the communist regime, in which the then police, or rather people's militia, severely punished all those who made up false stories, certainly in the opinion of the militia, directed against the people's authorities. Despite this, Wolski believed so much in the truth of his experiences that he reported to the police himself to tell about everything. Finally, it is worth mentioning the witnesses. Officially, in his book, Zbigniew Blania-Bolnar mentions little Adaś Popiowek, 6 years old at the time, the son of Wolski's neighbors, who told him that shortly after Wolski's encounter with aliens, he had seen an object flying over the village. The boy described the appearance of the object in a very similar way to Wolski. According to the little boy, it was a cuboid with something like vortexes at each corner. The object was whitish in color and moved silently and quickly over the village. The boy could even discern an alien face. The already mentioned Bartosz Radutowski discredits Adaś Popiowek's testimony in his book, suggesting that Zbigniew Blania-Bolnar manipulated him so that the boy confirmed the theory about a flying object and aliens inside it. For this, or a completely different reason, both adult Adam Popiowek and his entire family distance themselves from those events and do not want to talk about them with anyone. Therefore, there is no way to learn his version of events and confirm, or deny, that as a 6-year-old he actually saw an object flying over the village. Our own investigation, however, led us to several sources which show that in addition to the alleged or true observation made by Adaś Popiowek, there were several witnesses. Witnesses, let us add, whom it seems that Zbigniew Blania-Bolnar did not interview, perhaps not knowing about their existence. According to these sources, an elderly lady also witnessed the observation of the object and perhaps some kind of contact with aliens, although this is where the matter becomes unclear. The flying object, which, according to another witness, was similar to the one seen by Wolski, was also observed by a man who never officially admitted to it, as we have already mentioned, due to the potential repercussions of the so-called commune, but talked on this topic with neighbors, one of whom later told the media about it. Additionally, the same sources mention that Wolski's cousin ran to the clearing over which the object was floating immediately after Wolski had returned home and begun to talk about his experience. According to this witness, after a close encounter with aliens, Wolski had, as he put it, a patch like a button on the back of his neck that had not been there before. Finally, the same sources confirm that for many years after the incident, no vegetation wanted to grow in the meadow, and the branches of the birch tree near which the UFO parked were stunted with yellowed leaves. Interestingly, some time ago, this birch was cut down by Wolski's grandson. The question remains unanswered. What was the purpose of and the reason for this felling? The object was also observed by a large number of villagers. First, which coincides with Adaś Popiałek's testimony, it flew low over the village and then immediately took off upwards, causing a powerful boom of thunder that was heard throughout the area. When Wolski's family went to the meadow after some time, there was no trace of the object. The object itself, apart from the already mentioned yellowing of the vegetation, which later could not grow properly, did not leave any traces, but quite a lot of traces of strange alien feet, or rather shoes, were found. Unfortunately, these traces were quickly completely trampled upon by sensation-seeking visitors and the police investigating the matter. There is one more interesting, perhaps crucial issue regarding Wolski's adventure. He entered the clearing at 8:30, maybe 8 in the morning. He claimed he was on board the hovering vehicle for approximately 15 minutes. According to researchers investigating the case, the experience could have lasted longer, perhaps an hour. Meanwhile, Wolski also testified that afterwards he galloped the 450-meter distance between the clearing and his house, and yet when he looked at the alarm clock in the house, it showed 12:30. So the entire event could have lasted as long as 3.5 to 4 hours. If Wolski's calculations and testimony are true, we would be dealing with the phenomenon of missing time, and it is a pity that Wolski was not subjected to hypnotic regression to try to find out what happened during this period on board the hovering vehicle. Was he subjected to additional tests, or perhaps even manipulations, as could be indicated by Wolski's cousin's comment about the button on the back of his neck? However, for some reason the researchers did not want, could not, or simply did not dare to subject Wolski to such hypnosis. Jan Wolski died in 1990, and we will never know what really happened. Although not all details regarding the event in Emilcin can be confirmed or made credible, there are many circumstantial evidences supporting the authenticity of this close encounter. Golina. One of the most important pieces of evidence supporting the authenticity of the Emilcin events is the incident in Golina, a village located approximately 350 kilometers west of Emilcin in the Greater Poland Voivodeship. On the 27th of September 1978, Henryk Marciniak, then 31-year-old resident of Golina, was riding a motorcycle in the forest about 2 kilometers from the village because he had a day off and went mushroom picking. While driving along a field or forest path and passing one of the forest clearings, he suddenly noticed an object resembling a barracks or a barracks car a few dozen meters away. Since Marciniak knew this area and traveled there quite often, he knew that the object had not been there before and that, one could say, it came out of nowhere. Additionally, the object had no entrance or windows. It was 5 to 6 meters long and about 2.5 meters high and stood on something like legs or supports about 70 centimeters long. Suddenly, 2 creatures, approximately 140 to 150 centimeters tall, emerged from the object. According to the witness's description, these creatures had green faces and hands and were dressed in black overalls, which is almost entirely consistent with Jan Wolski's stories. Additionally, the creatures' eyes were slanted and their cheekbones were prominent. One of the beings held something like a strange camera in its hands. The witness, although he was surprised by the emergence of the creatures and their appearance, approached them, and they approached him. Marciniak extended his hand in greeting, and the creatures responded. As Marciniak stated, bones could be felt in the creatures' hands, which would mean that we were not dealing with imaginary creations or paranormal phenomena, but with physical beings of flesh and blood. Marciniak showed the creatures the mushrooms, making them understand by signs that they were food. The alleged aliens became very interested in Marciniak's motorbike, so he began to demonstrate the principle of operation of the vehicle and finally drove away from the scene. However, he hid in nearby bushes and trees. At one point, a buzzing sound could be heard from the vehicle, which seemed to call the beings back inside. The steps that had been sticking out so far rolled up towards the interior of the vehicle. Then the barracks or barracks car rose into the air to a certain height, surrounding itself with something like a cloud or mist. And then, in the blink of an eye, it soared towards the sky. For Zbigniew Blania-Bolnar, this case was a kind of continuation of Emilcin. What is interesting and strange, and for opponents of the authenticity of the event in Emilcin, it was an additional argument. Blania-Bolnar never performed similar tests with and on Marciniak that he carried out on Wolski, even though the case from Galena was obviously known to him and he even went there. It is not the end. Several decades have passed since the event in Emilcin, but both supporters and opponents of the veracity of this encounter with aliens still remember it, and the date of the 10th of May every year makes the case come alive again. 27 years after this story, in 2005, one of the organizations dealing with unexplained phenomena, including UFOs, on its own initiative erected a monument in Emilcin commemorating those events, called the UFO Monument. There is a plaque on the compact, minimalist and rough-hewn stone block reminding about the event. At the top, there is a metal cube, a symbol of mystery. In 2010, aliens apparently made themselves felt again because people passing by or staying near the monument heard a characteristic sound which, according to people who remembered Jan Wolski's testimony, closely resembled the one made by an object suspended above the ground in the meadow on the 10th of May, 1978. The sound apparently came from the monument, or rather, behind the monument, as if from above. Could it have been the same or similar object? Was a flying vehicle hovering over Emilcin again in 2010, perhaps surrounded by some kind of camouflage field and therefore invisible to people? What's more, a few years later, the same sound or murmur was heard by members of the above-mentioned organization that funded the monument. In the sources we managed to find, and which we have already mentioned, one of the younger residents of Emilcin also speaks out. She says one day she saw something in the sky that she called a fast bullet. It was like observing a very bright star very low to the ground that suddenly appeared, stood still for a while, and then moved very quickly and disappeared. This ball did not drag any tail behind it. This ball was also observed by a second person. One could naturally conclude that it was ball lightning or some other explainable phenomenon, but without further details and more information, it is impossible to either deny or confirm that the observed ball was either a natural or supernatural phenomenon. Over the years since the events in Emilcin, several photos have been taken of strange objects. Probably one of the most convincing is the one taken in November 2017, when a couple of young people, after taking a selfie at the monument, were driving home and noticed a strange object floating above the ground. After enlarging the photo, it turned out that the shape of the object may resemble the one from 1978. Conclusion. As in the case of many such encounters with aliens that have occurred throughout history in various places around the world, in the Emilcin case, it cannot be stated categorically, undeniably, and without the slightest shadow of a doubt that a close encounter with aliens took place there. Many witnesses are already dead, notably, of course, Jan Wolski. Others, for one reason or another, do not want to talk about those events either at all, or at least officially. There are still some inconsistencies, blank spots, and questions in this matter. On the other hand, in this case, it cannot be stated with equal categoricalness, conviction, and lack of doubt that such a close meeting did not take place in Emilcin in 1978 or any other time. This is one of the best researched and documented UFO alien cases in Poland. We have hours of tapes of Blania-Bolnar and his team talking to witnesses. We also have witnesses who, either at the time or years later, admitted that they had observed something unusual, strange, and impossible to explain. We have Wolski's test results confirming his normal mental condition, his inability to confabulate, his honesty and truthfulness, and his aversion to alcohol. So is the event in Emilcin just a fabrication, a lie, a joke, a provocation, a dream? Or was it there that one of the most momentous events for Polish and global ufology took place there a few decades ago? As usual, we leave you, dear viewers, with this question. Please write in the comments what you think about this, and if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and/or subscribe to the channel. Best regards, and see you in the next video.